Oh boy, YouTube. It has been an interesting night so far. So it's early for me. It's only about 12:30 at night or in the morning, depending on how you look at it. And I just got off of one of the more interesting and funny. Here, let's turn around. One of the more interesting and funny conference calls I've ever had in my entire life between myself, Jim Skelton, and Tough Thumbs. I will share bits of it, pieces of it with you as we progress through this video. It's going to be a long video, so go ahead and buckle your seat belts, fasten your trait. No, that's not right. Grab breakfast or lunch or dinner or a beverage or whatever, and just settle in. Get some popcorn. We're going to be here a while. What the hell are we looking at here on my desk? We're looking at basically production knives. Why do I have them sitting on my desk? People always ask me, Elliot, why don't you make assisted opening knives? Like this is I don't even know what the hell this model is. It's a Kershaw Ken Onion design, and it is I guess they call it speed safe now. And it still doesn't open all the way. It used to, but the reason it doesn't is because of some inherent design flaws in the torsion bar system. Where actually the thing that is retarding this knife from opening all the way is actually the torsion bar itself. Because over the years that I've had this knife, the torsion bar actually rubs up against an area of the machined out part of the inside of this knife and actually causes enough friction for the knife not to open all the way. One of the many reasons I don't do that. This other knife we have here is a Lapu Lapu Corto, and it was sent to me by one of my clients who wants me to recreate this knife with some changes and out of better materials. So I'm going to attempt to do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to attempt to mimic this sort of compression lock that is utilized on this knife because I don't know, I hate it. I mean, it's awkward to close one-handed. As far as a lock goes, it actually seems like a pretty sturdy lock. Interesting. And then we have a trusty Smith & Wesson here, and this is actually my my throwing knife here in the shop that I throw at things, because I do that because I'm a knife maker and I like to throw knives. What can I say? So anywho, let's look at some Prediums. They're still sitting here awaiting their blades. Their blades are out at laser engraving, and hopefully we'll be back. God, I hope tomorrow. I don't know what it is with every time a component of the Predium takes place, the machining or some part of it takes place outside of my shop, it always takes forever to get it back. So, I mean, partner Mark and I were talking about the Prediums and how it seems like they've taken a really long time to happen. And truth be told, they actually have. I mean, the concept of this came up when we first moved into this shop, and that was almost 5 months ago. And I think that's right about the time when I made the prototype, which apparently is going to be up for sale at North to South Knives. I did sell the prototype to Tony, who is one of the owners of North to South Knives, and it's actually been his personal knife. He's had it and loved it, and he was like, you know what? I think I'm going to put it up for sale because it's such a cool knife. I was like, do it, dude. I'd love to see what happens. And it is the prototype. It is there's none of the machine parts on it like are on the actual Predium. It was all completely handmade, and it bears my custom maker's mark, not the Ferrum Forge Knife Works logo. because it was a custom-made knife. But anyway, like I was saying, these, every time, so whether it has been water jet, laser engraving, surface grinding, it always took an exorbitant amount of time. And it's just so annoying. But all in all, this line has been very, very educational to me as a knife maker in terms of making decisions how I want to proceed and do things on future knives, excluding my custom stuff, because custom stuff, by the very nature of the custom work I do, needs to be done by hand because it's all one-off. But when I do runs, and I will continue to do runs because they are an effective way to make more than one knife at a time. And taking the lessons that I've learned from doing the Prediums, I should be able to be a little more smooth in my output of production type knives. And when I say production type knives, I mean I don't have to cut every single scale out, and I don't have to hand mill them every single part. I can have it water jetted, and I can use my CNC to do bulk processes that otherwise would take me a very long time to do by hand. Because this is the sort of the decision you run into as a knife maker at some point in time when you want to actually ply your trade, how about that, and have it be an actual business and not just something that's like a hobby, not something that you're doing in a garage, not something that is the thing that you're going to pursue for the rest of your life and that is eventually going to, fund your retirement, something like that, something that's going to put your kids through college. And so to make that sort of money, to make sustainable full-time income as a knife maker, it has become apparent to me, at least, that I have two choices. And those choices are buying more equipment, more CNC capability, in-house water jet capability possibly, so that I can turn out more knives at a time. Or I outsource some of these processes. So instead of me running a CNC and machining all of my parts, my scales, things like that, that I send that to a machine shop and have them do it. You would be amazed, general knife making public, how many of the makers that you think are doing this stuff all in-house, how many of them actually outsource a lot of their stuff. Because it's just a way more economical way to make knives. I talk about the economics of knife making as much as I possibly can, as much as you guys will stomach, because I find a lot of people just don't know. And with that being said, I see misinformation and a lack of information out there in forums, on YouTube, coming out of other makers' mouths sometimes. And it makes me scratch my head and go, what are they talking about? How are they doing that and expecting to have a profitable business at the numbers and time frames that I see other makers doing things at? And personally, I know that it is not fair to compare one knife maker to another, because all of our situations are different, and we're all at different phases of our knife careers, and we're in different modes of production. So just as I can't compare myself to Hinderer or Strider or Medford or Chris Reeve, right? Guys with staff, dedicated production facilities. So too can I not compare myself to someone who is still working in their garage. Tough Thumbs would be a fantastic example of this, right? Still working out of his garage, doing very nice stuff, right? That doesn't mean that you can't produce great knives from your garage or a small shop or something like that. I mean, Hoback is still in his garage. His shop is still a garage. But he has chosen to put his time and effort into more machinery. And so, and he's still a one-man operation, and he's also a vastly better machinist than I am. So he has his CNC running so much more of his knife than I do. And that is not an insult in any way or fashion. That's actually a compliment coming from me. I am always impressed with Jake's machining capabilities, and even when we chat on email, sometimes he gets like super hardcore machinist on me, and I have to be like, Jake, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's like, oh, sorry. I'm like, just because I have a CNC and I know how to program it to do the stuff I want, and I know what end mills I want to use, and I can calculate what speeds and feeds I want to use, doesn't mean I'm actually a machinist. Like, I'm like super hardcore self-taught. So, I don't know. Oh, what was... Jim Skelton had a fantastic one. Oh, see? I said I was going to write them down, and I didn't write it down. Skelton comes up with some of the best analogies and metaphors that I have ever heard, and they're absolutely hilarious. Almost as funny as being slapped across the face with a wet fish. That's a little bit of an inside joke, I'm sorry. But, so, I'm sorry we got off on a little tangent there about economics and the business of knife making, but it always comes up. It's always this issue, and like people can never let it go, and they always want to try and put boxes on knife makers and try and define like what they do without actually knowing what they do. I mean, and sometimes it's a little disheartening to read some of the things that are out there in comments and on forums, and with just the sort of level of ignorance that I see when people, poo-poo people for using machinery. It's quite funny. I mean, just because that's the way it used to be done doesn't mean that's the way it should be done. This is the 21st century after all, and I will tell you this: just wait until I have the funds to have an additive manufacturing machine here, or wherever my shop may be, because I will have it, and I will be additively manufacturing titanium, because that is the technology of the future. That is the way a lot of stuff is starting to get made in aerospace, and that is the way where I would like to start making knives. And people will say, well, it's not a handmade knife anymore because the machine is now making it. I mean, they will literally, so if we take something like this, right, this is carved titanium. So in an additive manufacturing setting, I could create the CAD file that would additively manufacture this whole entire scale like this, and I would not have to carve that titanium. And the question I always pose, because this also falls into the notion of midtech and using CNC, is there any less of me in that knife because I'm the one who has to program that? I have to create that design as a 3D rendering. Is there any less of my design ability and my artistic sense in that knife if I program the part and then I push the button on the machine and it makes the part for me? Is there less? I don't actually know the answer to that question. That's kind of a out there question, and I'm sure someone will comment on that. Hopefully, it'll be a intelligent response. But I don't know. It keeps coming up over and over and over again, and I feel like there's just so many people that don't understand what the the cost involved in creating knives, and the realities of any market, but the knife market in particular. And so people will look at a maker in their wait list, and they will say, I don't want to wait a year to get a knife, so I'm not going to order a knife from that maker. And we're all very, very aware of this as knife makers, that a lot of times our wait list can be a big deterrent to our market, to our potential clients. And so we have to find ways to begin mitigating that wait list. And one of those ways is to utilize modern machining, because it is in fact the 21st century, and the machining capabilities exist out there in the world. And if you don't have the money to have your own CNC, guess what? You can find people that have CNCs, and they will machine your stuff for you. And if we're going to be really honest, in many cases, it's actually cheaper to do that, to have your parts machined somewhere else, than it is to actually buy a CNC, run that CNC. Because when we talk about having a CNC, it's not just having that big machine that sits in there. I also have to have a CAD program. And let me tell you, boys and girls, CAD programs, especially 3D CAD programs, are not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And if you are not someone who has been trained in CAD, and you have to go through and learn how to run that CAD system and design parts with it and create precision within the CAD itself, within your rendering, that's not a quick process. And so it takes time to learn that. It takes time to learn how to take that three-dimensional CAD drawing that you've created and how to manipulate the actual CNC unit itself and turn that CAD program into a physical object with a CNC mill. It's not a trivial thing at all. I can show you a bunch of messed up stuff from us trying to figure out how this stupid thing works. No, I read everything that I could read about this. I talked to people about this machine, but still, it was having to actually sit down, and I spent an entire day and I just ran stuff on this machine. I figured out how to zero things, how to find edges, how to align things, align my plates, and do it all. It took me an entire 12 hours to learn how this machine functions, to learn what its capabilities are, because you can read the specs on a CNC, and it tells you it's accurate up to you go 4 decimal places out, and some in X and Y and Z it's to this, and that's all well and good, but until you can actually physically see what it does when you cut a part, when you mill in a pocket, when you counterbore something on that CNC, until you can actually see it and take calipers to it and measure it and go, okay, it is in fact that accurate in this dimension, or it is lacking in accuracy in this one particular dimension. For us, Z has been the difficulty. We have had issues creating precision in our Z dimension on this machine. That's the up and down. And part of it was we had a tool measuring device, and the tool measuring device was faulty. It was giving bad readings. And you could measure a part 10 times, and it would give you 10 different answers, 10 different measurements. And so that's what eventually started happening, is I was measuring parts, and I'd measure them once, twice, 3 times, and I get different, and I keep going, and I get out to 10 different measurements, and they'd all be different measurements. And then at that point, it's like, oh, what the F is going on here? And so we had to get a new one. Now we have a new one, and the precision of the CNC is significantly improved, which is great. But it took us weeks to learn that. And burnt up material and tools doing that. So CNC is not just this magic bullet that makes knife making all of a sudden super duper easy. In fact, I find it quite the opposite. And Hobeck mentioned this in a recent video. where he said, just because it's CNC doesn't mean it's any less work. And I said, you are absolutely correct, Jake. It's just a different kind of work. Instead of standing in front of my grinder grinding out the shape of a scale, right, I'm on a computer screen fine-tuning the programming, right, debugging an entire set of programs, so that when I push start, all I have to do is come in here and change the tooling when it tells me to change the tooling. And having confidence that my machine is going to do the same thing over and over and over again, that I'm going to have repeatability in my process. That has taken a very long time to go from zero, having never had a CNC before, to now being able to utilize that CNC effectively, so that CNC is not absorbing more time than it is saving. That's the balance of working with CNC. So I hope you're starting to get this picture, right? That it's not just that simple as, I'm sending out a design to WaterJet, and the parts are coming back, and I just magically hook them in my CNC, and all of a sudden, boom, out pops a finished knife. Because it's not like that at all. One of my favorite videos of all time is a Todd Vague video from several years ago, because he wasn't on like the super leading edge of knife makers using CNC, but he's definitely one of the guys who promoted the use of CNC in knife making, because he's a machinist, and he said, this is stupid. Why are we doing all this stuff by hand when we have CNC and WaterJet technologies? Why don't we utilize them, much as Ken Onion had done? And so Todd did this fantastic video where he had a very nice CNC. And he did this satirical video where he pushed the start button, right? He stood there looking in the camera, right? And like a bell chimed or something like that. And he walks around to the back of the CNC, right? Lifts up a little flap and pulls out a box, right? And inside a completed like civilian glimpse with bubble wrap and all ready to like ship out. And he goes, yeah, there you go. See? CNC, it's like magic. I programmed the bubble wrap in there. Look at that. It made the box and everything. How crazy. Being completely satirical about it. Because he was facing the exact same sort of detraction that I'm still seeing out there, right? It's 2013, and I'm still seeing people poo-pooing the use of CNC and WaterJet in knife making, when everyone else in every other industry uses CNC. Jewelry, the majority of jewelry, right? If it can be, it is being made on CNC now. There is almost not a consumer product that you buy that is not made by a machine. And I'm not saying that's the most fantastic, wonderful thing in the world, but if you want things out in a timely fashion, if you want repeatable tolerances, right? If you want non-absorbent prices, and guess what? That product's going to have to be made via some kind of CNC technology. It's just the way it is. That's modern manufacturing. Now, I will say this in defense of completely handmade knives, since I make completely handmade knives. There is a difference in feel. There's this indefinable quality to them, where you can feel, this is a little ethereal, but you can actually feel that the thing you're holding in your hand was made by another human being. And it feels like another human being specifically made this to fit in a hand. And I can tell the difference when I handle a knife that was made by a machine and when I handle a knife that was made by another human being. It's there. It's tangible. It's real. So I'm not saying one way is better or necessary than the other. I'm just saying that there are two methods, and they're not mutually exclusive of each other, nor are they opposed to each other in any way, shape, or form. But each thing has its advantages. And quite frankly, to think or say otherwise is very, it's a little bit ignorant and a little short-sighted of the realities of producing anything in the 21st century. in this country. Let me be clear, in the United States of America, because we have one of the highest standards of living of the entire world. But that high standard of living also comes with a cost. So, what were the statistics I was reading based on the last census, the 2010 census? It was the determination of poverty, the poverty line, as it's called in the United States of America. And for a family of four, I have a family of four, it's $22,000 a year of income. That's the poverty line. Now, I can tell you from experience that you cannot survive on $22,000 a year. Flat out. That is like a base level of existence. That is a horrible quality of life where you're almost homeless. Because, especially here in the state of California, it's expensive to live here. It's expensive to produce things here. And people would say, well, why don't you move? Well, guess what? It's also very expensive to move a business. So, moving is not quite an option yet. One day, might I move? Maybe. I'll think about it. I mean, I like to tell the tale of Buck Knives. So Buck Knives started here in San Diego, in a part of San Diego not too far away called El Cajon. And they were here. They were making knives. Chuck Buck was running things. Things were groovy until the fine city of San Diego decided to jack up their tax rate, their business tax rate. And Chuck said, if you do this, I can't stay here. I have to move. Like, can you work with me on this thing? And like, I employ this many people, I generate this much tax revenue for you as is, but if you push me up to a different percentage, then I can't stay here, because it doesn't make any sense as a business owner to stay and pay a higher rate of tax when I could move to another state and pay no tax for the cost of moving my business. And he eventually had to, because the city of San Diego said, no, we're not going to work with you. You're not getting any special treatment whatsoever, even though you employ 50 people and you generate, X hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for the city of San Diego. It's not going to happen. And, not to mention all the other parts of the industry that you support. So they supported water jet people, and they supported heat treating people, and they supported, who else did they support? They supported material suppliers, right? All local people. I can't go anywhere in the city and tell a person that, I'm a knife maker without having a story about Buck Knives come back at me. Same thing goes with Strider. I can't go anywhere without people telling me about Strider, especially machining, water jet, heat treat, stuff like that. People telling me about how they did work for Buck, and they do work for Strider currently. And so I tell that story as sort of a reality check sometimes. That at the end of the day, I want to make a great knife, right? I want to make my clients happy. But at the end of the day, my number one concern as the guy whose business card says CEO, my number one concern always has to be for my company. That is part of my job title, doing what is best for Fair & Forged Knife Works. And that's why I made the decision. I want to do runs of knives that are, in my mind, a midtech, but in everybody else's mind, they're custom. And I want to be able to produce them at specific price points, because I want more people to have my stuff, right? And my base price for a custom is at $600. But very rarely do people get a base model of a custom, because essentially, I'm giving you the keys to the candy store, as it were, and you're getting to do whatever you want, as long as it's, mechanically feasible. So we can work with whatever material you want. We can do whatever blade shape you want. We can do all kinds of crazy shit, custom hardware, all sorts of things like that. And I'm willing to do it for a price, obviously, because I can't be making stuff for free or be making stuff at a loss. That's actually my greatest concern, is making knives at a loss. And so that's why I had to make the decision, because I couldn't make 100 knives by hand in the time frame that I'm going to have the Prediums done, which is hopefully in about a month and a half. Hopefully. I'm going to work really hard to make it happen. It's just not feasible. Right? So I tell the story, last year I had what was the best year of my life career, and I sold 72 knives in a year. Made 72 knives. This year, right, by the time the Prediums are done, I will have made well over 100. We'll be looking at more like 120, 130 knives. And the year won't even be over yet. There's no way that I could do that by hand. I had to use waterjet and CNC because I had to take my hands out of that process as much as I possibly could. So my hands could also do other things, like make custom knives. And so that's just the bare bones economics of this. If you want to make a lot of knives, maintain a level of quality, and be able to offer them at a certain price point, it can't be handmade. I see a certain maker on YouTube talking about how he is doing that. And I have major questions that I want to ask that guy. In fact, I probably will end up emailing him and asking him questions about it. Because if he has found the secret to making a handmade custom knife for $350, then I want to know what that secret is. Because I want to be able to do what he's doing. Because one of my greatest design and business desires is to be able to create actually like a $250 custom knife, that employs some of the cool shit that I can do. And it's a scary thing to try and do because it drops me into a high-end production knife market. So that would be directly competing with that Rexford designed zero tolerance. I've handled that knife, and that is a fantastic knife. Really, really impressive. I mean, I thought the Southern Flipper, the Spyderco Southern Flipper, was an impressive knife, and that zero tolerance Rexford is even more impressive. And at the price point that it's listed at, MSRP, I think it's like $250. I don't even know how they're doing that, how that knife is being produced in the United States of America at that price point. So obviously they have really worked out their process so that they have optimized all of their machining so that there's not an enormous manufacturing cost in that knife. Not the kind of manufacturing cost that I see, because they're very, very real. That is the most expensive part of a knife. Right? I am never shy about this. So the titanium and steel that goes into a knife, even nice expensive steel like Elmax, that's roughly $20 a pound. That doesn't make up a big part of the cost of a knife. Actually, the hardware that's in that knife costs it's about the same as the titanium and steel in it. The hardware, the screws, the pivot, the stop pin, the standoffs, the bearings, and the rolling detent screw, and the pocket clip. I mean, you total all those costs up, and they are almost equal to the cost, including the initial cutout, the water jet cost involved in having the blade and the scales water jetted out. It's almost as much as the actual important part, if you will, of the knife. And so I'm always interested in how that works manufacturing-wise, how a production company like Zero Tolerance, producing that knife in the United States of America, is able to do that. Because I'd like to learn how to do that. Whew. I think this video is getting kind of boring. I don't know, I'm just rambling on about manufacturing. Ew, it's not very exciting, I guess. Unless you're curious about these kind of things, unless you want to be informed a little bit. So this knife, it's right here. We'll talk about some knives now. That will eventually be finished, hopefully in the next few days. This is for the St. Jude's Children's Hospital charity event that Summit Materials is doing. They're having a bunch of knife makers. The likes of Tom Mayo, Mick Strider, Dwayne Dwyer, John Graham, Jeremy Horton, some minorly small, little guys, little fellas in the industry are doing knives out of SM100 as charity pieces for an auction. So yeah, that'll be finished up soon. That's going to be impressive, I hope. This is a knife I'm doing for Jeff, because Jeff really loves colorful knives. I don't know if you knew that. He really loves them. He likes very bright anodization. So like that teal, he really loved that teal. So I'm totally going to keep that teal in there for him. Jeff does not like bright knives. I put it up on Instagram just to kind of screw with him. He was like, I saw that knife, it's cool, but does it have to be that colorful, man? And I was like, yes, it does. Just for you, big boy. He was like, okay. I was like, I'm joking, dude. I said it probably was going to change, don't worry. That is Michael Gavick, also known as Gavco. That's the show scale for his flipper that I'm making, based on his frame lock. This would be an interesting knife. Kind of cute. Those are some things that I've been doing. Got a couple of Prediums on my bench. I'm actually going to work through a bunch more this week. So this is actually 21, 22, and 23. 23 is over there, hanging out. I was actually about to cut in a lock interface on that guy. So that's what's going on. This week I'm also going to add all of these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that'll be about 12 that I'll do all at one time. And these guys, I'm going to let you in a little secret here, YouTube. For those of you who've been in this long, there are three of these are actually going to go to Blade HQ as sort of a introductory before I complete the rest of their order of 30. So they'll take them and they'll use them to do some propaganda. It's actually these ones right here, 25, 26, and 27. Those will actually go to Blade HQ. So they'll have 3 in about 10 days. Hopefully 10 days. Assuming things don't get screwed up. And by things, I mean, stuff like the laser engraving. Every time the knives leave this shop, like, disaster happens. And it takes people like 4.5 days to do stuff that should take them 3 hours. But anyway, I digress. So I'm sending them these 3 early, not as a part of their 30. Well, it is part of their 30, but not as the big chunk of their 30. Specifically so that they can take pictures of them, do YouTube video of them, whatever they want to do with them marketing wise, and then maybe like do a quick, like throw them up real fast. So you'll see when these are done. I'll let you know. I'll let you know when they're done and going out. So because knowing's half the battle. I think we covered quite a range of topics in this video. It's a little bit more somber than I was kind of expecting this to be after the sort of jovial conversation that I just had with Jim Skelton and Tough Thumbs. It really was. I mean, they're fun guys to talk about and joke with. But yeah, it's always interesting. You may be looking at these bags sitting on my desk and this bottle cap. I'm still right. Another setback. It's not really a setback yet, but it might be. With getting parts from knifekits.com. It's ridiculous. I mean, you're seeing this bag full of stuff listed as, bad, rejects. They're sending me poorly machined parts, and I'm not going to put that in the Predium. Sorry. I'm not going to put that in any of my knives. So, I don't know. I'm getting so tired of it. I mean, so tired of it. It's ridiculous. Redonkulous. The other issue we've had, hardware-wise, is actually getting rolling detents. Let's see if we can set that guy up and zoom into it. Maybe. Focusing a little bit. There we go. So that is a rolling detent screw. It's pretty small. It's a funky metric size. It's an M3 by 0.5. It has a rolling ball on the end of it. There's only one company in the entire world that makes this part, this particular part in this particular set of materials, which is a 440C ball with a 304 stainless screw. And that company is in Japan, and as it turns out, they do not do direct business with people in the United States of America. You have to go through the distributor. And as Jake Hobach and I have found, that distributor is not particularly awesome. So they've been very difficult to deal with, and their lead times have been absolutely asinine. So we're trying to figure out some way to skirt that particular distributor and get a hold of these things more reliably, because the reliability is the issue. And if that means we have to order, thousands of them at a time, and they cost $6 a piece, by the way. If we have to order, thousands of them at a time, then that's what we have to do in order to ensure that we have adequate supply. An adequate supply chain for them. This is one of the many things that go on, trying to do the Predium run is sourcing hardware for it. It's not a trivial process at all. It's actually been a giant pain in the butt, but it's something that you got to do if you're gonna make more than one knife at a time. It's been due to me, and so. Along that the sort of same line, Jim said something very interesting in his latest video. They were talking about deposits and upfront payments for knives that have a fairly long wait list, half a year. And while I do understand where Jim is coming from, and some people that commented on that video were coming from, I do feel that I have to bring up that there's no other industry that I'm aware of where you order something that is going to be made specifically for you and where you don't have to pay for it up front. At least a 50% deposit. So for example, I've been waiting for these parts for over a month. They're a standard part. They're not a custom made anything. But I had to pay for the entire group that I ordered of them. I ordered 100 of them. I had to pay for them up front. It was not like a discussion like, you can pay us when they come in. No, it was, we'll take your money, and then when they get here, we'll ship them to you. The same thing if I were to have components, if I were to have, hardware like that made for me. I've talked to people about it, and they wanted a 50% of the order payment up front. And that is a completely reasonable thing to do in every other industry. So I'm a little curious as to why knives are special somehow, from an industry perspective, like from a business perspective. Why knives get special treatment? I mean, for example, like so when I got married and I got my wife an engagement ring, it had to be sized, and she wanted to add stuff to it. And so I had to pay for that knife. I had to pay for that wedding ring. I had to pay for all the work that was going to be done to it. And then I didn't get that knife back that ring back for 2 months because, their jeweler was clogged up or some shit like that. So I just don't get it. I mean, the even better example would be is if you, let's say you get an Aston Martin. So when you buy an Aston Martin, they actually put a panel with your name like engraved on the entryway of the door. That's just one of the things they do. And so you order your Aston Martin, and it takes them however long it takes for it to get for them to do that to it at the Aston Martin factory, wherever the hell that is. It's not in this country. And then that thing has to get shipped over here and then delivered to wherever your dealership is. And that process can take up to 6 months. And so you're still paying for that Aston Martin up front. You're still paying the, six figures for that car, but it could be 6 months until it gets delivered to you. I know I heard a good story of someone who bought a BMW, and it was like a special BMW, like a limited edition BMW. And it had a very hefty price tag, and the deal is that you have the option of flying to Germany, picking up your BMW from the factory in Germany, and then driving it all the way through Europe to one of the ports where it's going to ship out of to America. And from the time that you, make that order, they have to make your car, literally. This is a very high-end BMW. They have to make that car for you. So there's a 3-month, or not 3 month. There's a 2-month wait time in between when you actually purchase the car, and then you can go to Germany, and then you have to drive it up to, I think, whatever port it might have been in France or Spain or something. And then it ships out, and then so you get to have your car for a couple of days, and then you lose your car again for a week as it gets shipped across the ocean, and then back to wherever you pick it up again and drive it back to your house. I tell these stories because when I show some of these YouTube videos to partner Mark, who's been involved in other businesses other than knives, he shakes his head and he's like, "What? I don't understand why the knife industry thinks it's different from any other industry." He's like, anywhere you buy anything that has to be made, you don't get to pay for it when it's done. You always have to pay for it up front, because that's how, as a business, you ensure that you have cash flow, and how you ensure that you're being compensated for work and materials that you put into a product, regardless of if that person bails out at the end, or if you have to resell it or something like that. It's insurance, and it actually functions as a piece of legal contract. Whenever money has exchanged hands, then whoever is at the receiving end of that money is then legally bound to produce whatever it is that they were contracted to produce. The money seals the deal, and sort of vice versa for me. I mean, so I take a deposit, a fairly small deposit, $100 deposit on a custom order now, because A, I have to maintain cash flow around here, and B, it weeds out people, so I don't waste my time dealing with people who either cannot or decide not to actually go through and have a custom knife made by me. It's rare that I have a custom knife and then I make it, and then someone sees it or gets it and they go, "You know what, it's not really my thing," and then I have to take it back and sell it. But what I have had happen is people, order a knife from me. They're all excited about it. I make the knife, and then right when it's about to ship, all of a sudden something happens in their life and they can't buy the knife. And I understand, I'm not a monster or an ogre, but that being said, I've just made a knife. I've expended time, and time is the real important thing here. The materials on the knife, I keep saying this, materials on the knife, as long as they're not, exotic materials, like a $300 piece of Timascus, that's going to make a knife, $300 worth of scales and a knife, or SM100 where it has, $200 worth of blade material in it. Outside of those kind of exotics, the titanium, carbon fiber, and steel that go into a knife really aren't an enormous cost. It's the time that it took to make that knife. Because in the time frame that I'm taking to make this knife, that doesn't have an immediate income into this company after it is done being made, and that I have to either send somewhere else or spend more time trying to sell elsewhere, right? It means that the time frame that I was making this knife is time that I wasn't spending making your knife. Right? You start thinking of it in a little bit more personalized term. Does it start to make a little more sense now? There's nothing about greed, right? This is just the way that you run secure businesses. Businesses where cash flow is maintained throughout them. So I never have a point in my business where I have to take money from my bank account or partner Mark's bank account to fund things that go on here. Does that make sense to people? It's just the realities of business, right? The business has to be self-sustaining. Otherwise, it's not a very good business. And you should probably get out of it before it sucks you dry. Wow, that got really serious. And we are 50 minutes in. A 50-minute video. Holy shit. Well, there you go, people. You wanted some rambles and you wanted some info. Now you got it. 50 minutes later. I'm excited. This is going to be great. There's going to be some good comments on this one, I can tell. All right, YouTube. I will see you later.